So this video is going to be a little different. Normally I would turn something like this into a presentation or, something with a lot of visuals, but I've got a lot of things to do, so I don't really have time to do that. If you guys like it, this is a research paper that I put together, and it's not, obviously I had due dates on it, so I had to kind of rush it to some extent. But overall, it is pretty good. Just as we get more towards the conclusion, it's not going to be as detailed, but I hope you guys still like it. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the most influential military commanders to have ever lived in the world history. Through a series of successful campaigns, he established himself as a leader whose strategic mastery was unparalleled, demonstrating a rare ability to seize opportunities, coordinate his armies efficiently in complex operations, and demolish vast coalitions across Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte was not someone who merely got lucky, as his success encompassed taking advantage of opportunities, strategizing, a little bit of luck, instinct, and had taken it upon himself to engage in self-study and learn from great generals of the past. A major reason why Napoleon became such a formidable general was his early years spent training at École Royale Militaire in Brienne-le-Château and École Militaire in Paris. There he would be given the tools to develop a strong foundation in artillery, discipline, basic tactics, and leadership. Beyond his formal training, he had taken it upon himself to learn advanced tactics from great generals from the past during his self-study. Prominent among the great commanders he was influenced by were Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Hannibal, Frederick the Great. Napoleon, studying at the two military schools previously mentioned, gave himself a strong base for being able to understand and utilize previous military tactics that were used in the past by great commanders. This would distinguish Napoleon from many military commanders of his time. The results of this education and self-study would prove to have been valuable on the battlefield, where Napoleon would repeatedly exercise bold leadership, exploit enemy weakness, and effectively coordinate his armies in complex military operations. Napoleon gained a very strong foundation that many of his adversaries would not have, which would give him a level of preparation and tactical awareness that his opponents did not possess. The strength of this foundation would soon prove itself to have paid off, especially in Napoleon's early campaigns, where he would achieve many victories. Napoleon experienced much success as a general because he knew how to plan and execute his battle plans. He also understood the importance of adapting, along with speed, timing, and battlefield awareness. The combination became especially clear at the Siege of Toulon in 1793, when Napoleon would take his position of leading the artillery forces, due to the former artillery commander being wounded. Napoleon understood the enemy's strength came from control of the harbor, which was being protected by fortified positions, particularly Goulet and Balaguer. Napoleon, years prior, put together a battle plan on how he would defend his home Corsica, with there being a harbor. He had similar defense plans to what he was facing at Toulon. That would give him an advantage to know how to counter the defenses at Toulon. To put the odds in favor of France, Napoleon positioned his artillery to destroy those fortified positions and break the defenses protecting the harbor. After Napoleon bombarded the forts, he joined in the ground assault to seize the harbor defenses, and in doing so he was wounded in the thigh by a bayonet. The fall of the harbor's defenses would force the Allied fleet to flee from Toulon. This would give France a major victory and ultimately increase Napoleon's rise to fame. Had Napoleon not changed the French strategy of attacking broadly with artillery, this was put forth by General Château, France would have seen a very different outcome at Toulon. Napoleon had the foresight to see that attacking strategic points would change the course of the siege. These qualities would not just appear at Toulon, as Napoleon would continue to demonstrate the same expertise in future campaigns, especially at the Battle of Rivoli in 1797. His actions at Rivoli would further demonstrate Napoleon's effectiveness on the battlefield. It would significantly change the outcome of the battle. When the Austrians were trying to overwhelm the French with columns of soldiers, Napoleon could see exactly where the Austrians were intending to attack from. Rather than relying on luck against the Austrians, Napoleon will respond with quick troop movement, rapid concentration, careful use of terrain and artillery. Napoleon had positioned his artillery at the plateau of Rivoli. In doing so, he could bolster his defenses and disrupt advancing Austrians attempting to overwhelm the French. This plan worked perfectly because Quasinovich's column was repulsed first, causing a retreat, and the terrain would fragment enemy infantry, creating a domino effect that would disrupt the entire Austrian assault. This would be a major victory for Napoleon and the French. Colonel Graham of the Austrian forces wrote that Bonaparte had set up his artillery defenses in the only spot that could have repelled the Austrian advance. Graham also writes that Napoleon's men had strong trust in his plan, shared Bonaparte's confidence in victory. Colonel Graham is emphasizing a unique respect for Napoleon's boldness, although that same boldness would be mimicked by the Austrian forces. The problem was they were not Napoleon and could not repeat the same results that Bonaparte achieved. It would be very difficult for someone to argue that Napoleon was simply lucky. While luck did help him at times, his success still required timing, patience, strategy, preparation, and leadership to gain his success. Looking at what led to his rise, it is worth asking whether Napoleon was lucky when Corsica was invaded by the French, when he felt his father had turned his back on his family, or when he was lucky when he was put into a military school. I think Napoleon was fortunate to have gotten to self-study and attend military school, because that made him realize he could be great and gave him the tools to be successful. Yet this luck would have meant little if Napoleon had not capitalized and acted on the opportunity. This can be seen throughout many of Napoleon's campaigns. In battles such as Toulon, Montagnette, Lodi, Arcole, and Rivoli, Napoleon repeatedly demonstrates good judgment and military ability. At Toulon, Napoleon focused on striking fortified positions that forced the Allied fleet to retreat. At Monette, he disrupted coordination between Austrian and Piedmontese forces through combined infantry attacks supported by artillery to split the forces, preventing them from uniting. At Lodi, Napoleon ordered an aggressive assault supported by artillery to drive back retreating Austrian forces on the Adda Bridge. At Arcole, Napoleon adopted to the marshy terrain by shifting his attacks along narrow causeways, while harassing the Austrians despite repeated setbacks. And at Rivoli, Napoleon utilized the terrain and set up a good defensive position to resist and destroy the Austrian assault. Across these campaigns, Napoleon consistently demonstrated that he created opportunities for luck through preparation, quick execution, good judgment rather than simply getting lucky. Although Napoleon had seen many successes and was a highly capable military commander, Spain and Russia exposed the talent was not enough to make up for poor judgment and overreach. In Spain, Spanish guerrillas forced France into a costly struggle that would expose the dangers of overreach and trying to dominate a hostile territory. In Russia, Napoleon's invasion ended in catastrophe because the harsh winter conditions came earlier than expected, which led to many Frenchmen being killed by ambushers, poor supply lines, disease, starvation, exposure to the cold. Napoleon's military career was not built on luck by itself, but on consistent discipline, self-study, preparation, focus, creating opportunity, being able to see where the enemy would go, countering the attack, and effective command. His victories were not accidents or random, but the product of military ability. Ultimately, Napoleon created his own luck rather than relying on it to make him successful. For that reason, he remains one of history's greatest military commanders to ever walk the earth.